But I'm here today to speak on behalf of my friend Crystal Spain, who's running for chair of the South Carolina Democratic Party. Before I get started doing that, I want to say a special thank you to my friend Remley. When I was a student in college and was just getting started in politics, I was in Columbia, didn't really know anybody, so I went down to the Democratic headquarters to volunteer. And Remley was running Gore 2000 that year. And she kept me working, and when the election cycle was over, she helped me get connected and work in the process, helped me get to work for Congressman Clyburn at that time. And I owe her a debt of gratitude for her mentorship, but more than that, for her friendship over the years. Because of that friendship and because of getting to work with other great Democrats like Paul Agnew, Floyd Nicholson over the years, I've had a chance to work in Abbeville, and it's just a great pleasure to be here. And I appreciate everything y'all are doing for the Abbeville Party. Let me tell you why I'm for Crystal. I believe that she is the most experienced, most qualified candidate going into this sort of new era for us as a South Carolina Democratic Party. We're going to have the first, not just in the South presidential primary, but the first in the nation presidential primary. And as we go into that process, we have to have leadership that has a deep and broad knowledge of South Carolina, but has also worked at the national level. Crystal has served all the way up. Nobody gave her a ticket into the process. She worked her way up as a volunteer. And she worked her way up from volunteer all the way to working for campaigns and then becoming executive director of the state Democratic Party. When she did that, she got to know the whole state. Through her campaign work after that, she got noticed and was asked to go work in Washington for the DCCC. That's the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee. And their job is to elect Democratic members of the House of Representatives in Congress. A big part of the reason why that red wave never came this last time around is Crystal's work on behalf of our party in Washington. Now, with her knowledge of South Carolina and her work here, and her knowledge and work and connections in Washington, there's nobody better to lead us into the next decade for the South Carolina Democratic Party, especially starting out with us being on the national radar and having that first in the nation primary. I'd like to say a few other things about this process as an election. One of the tough things, y'all have all worked on Democratic primaries, and one of the tough things is when we're running against each other amongst ourselves, it's just not as much fun, because it's great to run against Republicans and stomp all over them. That's the best thing in the world. It's tough running against Democrats. The other candidates for chair, Brandon Upson, Catherine Fillion Bruce, are wonderful. They're my friends. I know both of them would do a good job. I've had a chance to work with them. I think the world of them. I don't have anything bad to say about them. And as we have this election process, I hope we focus on building up the party, what the party can be. If this election is an exchange of ideas about what's going to make the party strong, then whoever wins, we're going to have a strong party. And instead of there being some sort of Columbia silo where everybody makes decisions down there and nobody listens to us, we will have had candidates who've listened to local parties, listened to experienced folks, listened to new folks about how we can be strong. We'll focus on voter registration. We'll focus on building our grassroots. We'll focus on building our county parties from the precinct up if we work together in this election process. It's an election, of course, it's a competition, but what I hope is that this is a process where we listen to one another and something good comes out of this, not just electing a chair, but building a party. Be happy to answer any questions about Crystal, and I appreciate y'all's time. I know she would have liked to have been here herself, but unfortunately wasn't able to make the trip this evening due to other obligations.
Where's her home base?
Columbia.
Columbia.
Yeah.
What's the last name?
Spain, Crystal Spain. She was the executive director a few years back when I think she got started as staff when Harpootlian was chair and became the executive director when Jamie was chair, and then has worked as a director for Bernie Sanders' campaign in 2016 when he was running for president here in South Carolina, that South Carolina campaign, and then in a director capacity for Cory Booker when he was running for president in 2020. And then went from there to work for the DCCC on minority engagement. I forgot to point out that I believe it was the 16 races that she was assigned to work on for the U.S. House in the last election cycle in 2020. She won all but one. And we need a record of victory in our chair, and that's what she brings to the table, not just here in South Carolina, but all over the nation. Okay, well, I don't want to take up too much time. I know y'all got business to do. But anything else I could answer for you?
Does she have any special programs in view for rural areas?
Yes. I think that there are three things especially. One is, in rural areas, it's even more important that the state party shows strong support for the county parties. In big metropolitan areas, there'll be lots of Democratic volunteers and donors if you go to Greenville or Columbia and Charleston. And those folks can get involved in campaigns. But in rural communities, if the county parties aren't strong and don't have support from the state, it is difficult for candidates to compete in those communities. So that's a very high priority for her. The second thing is, where we have had losses recently, and in 2022 and in 2020 we had some significant legislative losses. It's been in rural Senate districts and House districts. Particularly, there's going to need to be a focus on those places where we had those losses. That's Greenwood and McCormick, where Ann Parks wasn't reelected. A big part of that was a gap in enthusiasm between Democratic voters and Republican voters. For whatever reason in South Carolina, Democratic voters, not the folks in this room who were active and involved, but just broadly speaking, were depressed. And I think a big part of that was there had not been a long-term cultivated effort to build voter registration and precinct leadership in the precincts where we got a turnout Democratic vote. That's especially going to need to happen in McCormick and Greenwood. That's going to need to happen in Jasper and Hampton, where Shedron Williams lost, and then also in Clarendon County and Sumter. Part of it we also see in rural counties, and Crystal is very aware of this, is there's this sort of sorting going on in America where younger people who are more progressive want to move to cities, and they don't want to stay in the rural communities that they grew up in. I don't think that's a great decision, but that's what young folks are doing. And consequently, rural areas that have had a strong Democratic Party and strong Democratic elected officials don't have that up-and-coming base of support. And folks that have been reliably Democratic voters are moving away from us. So if we don't build Democratic strength in those areas, particularly rural areas like Clarendon, Western Sumter, Jasper, Hampton, and McCormick and Greenwood, we're going to continue to see the kind of results that we saw in 2022, and that's unacceptable. And I know that as chair, winning back those seats is our highest priority, and the way you do that is you build local activist strength and you build county party strength in those communities. It's important everywhere, but it's especially important in rural communities.
I know I talked to her for about an hour on the phone, and she's still coming to Abbeville, she said, but it's going to be maybe real close to the election. But she's focusing on the parties, the county party, in the rural areas that don't have any money, and she's going to develop some type of grant to try to help the parties out. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
One thing that she has done that is beginning to build strength across the state, but especially in rural areas, is she was the person that implemented the Clyburn Fellows program when that first started. Mm-hmm. So she was the executive director when that program started under Jamie, and she was responsible for getting it off the ground. And mentoring young leaders and making sure they're able to serve in our community is a big priority for her.
All right, that's right. Any other questions from anybody? Mm-hmm.
Thank you so
Well,
much.
thank you so much. All right, let's give him a hand.
Look forward to seeing you state event.
My hand.
Hey, Auntie. Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you for the invite, Brenda, and to all you guys. Thank you for the invite to speak with you today. A little bit about me. I'm homegrown. Here in hometown, so it's always a good thing to come back home and share the things that I've been blessed to do. But as many of you know, graduated from high school here, went to college in Greenwood and Lander. As far as my career-wise, started here at the Abbeville City Police Department, working here about a year and a half. Left and went to Greenwood, over at the sheriff office there. During that time at the sheriff office, worked uniform patrol, worked community service, and the difference between those two divisions is that with community service, you out serving the community. As you see on the patrol calls, protect and serve. So those two words mean something other than just a slogan on the patrol cars. But you protecting and serving. You're giving service to the people. You're providing service to the people, trying to protect them as your abilities allow you to. While I was at the sheriff office, I spent 8 years there. While I was there, worked in narcotics. Worked in narcotics 5 years, where I worked with state and federal agencies, doing drug investigation, doing undercover work. Throughout that time, got some good things out of that. It got some people off the streets that was causing harm to the community. It's what we're supposed to do. Did a little stint in criminal investigation, but more of my time was focused on narcotics. After my time in narcotics, I went back on uniform patrol for a little while. And then that's when I was afforded the opportunity to go work for the 8th Circuit Solicitor's Office. The Solicitor's Office covers 4 counties: Abbeville, Greenwood, Lawrence, and Newberry. That's where you hear general sessions. General sessions come in, that's what the Solicitor's Office does. I was an investigator over there for 4 years. During that time, I was also adjunct and part-time at Piedmont Tech, teaching criminal justice. So before I dive into that, about my background, educational background, I have a bachelor's in criminal justice. My master's is in criminal justice with an emphasis on security. Currently, I'm working on my doctoral degree in psychology for criminal justice. So hopefully, Lord's will, I'll be finished with that sometime this year. That's a long process. But while at the Solicitor's Office, conducting investigations into criminal activity cases that we brought to general sessions court, making sure that the case file was right as we got them from the sheriff office, the police department, just any agency in that circuit, in that county circuit there. So making sure that evidently I's are dotted, T's are crossed before the case went to court. Currently, I am at Piedmont Tech, a professor out there, teaching criminal justice. Been out there now, this is my 6th year out there, teaching criminal justice. So as you see, my background is all around law enforcement. But my downtime was spending time with my family, my boys, my wife. Of course, going to Carolina games. I don't know, Carolina fans. Spending time there, but giving back. That's my nature. Not only that, I have a mentoring group where we're going to partner with our brother DB there, Models Academy over in Greenwood, mentoring young African young males from grades 4 through 12th grade and beyond. I always say beyond because once you're a mentor, you never stop being a mentor. You always going to mentor those guys as they venture through life, because they're always going to be able to call upon you, ask you a question, how you go through this, how you get through this life situation. So my life is all around built on serving others, and I enjoy it. When you talk about your purpose in life, I believe that is my purpose, to serve others to the best of my ability. So that's who I am. Thank you for your time.
All right.
Oh, I'm sorry. My auntie. There's my aunt back there. There's my auntie back there. My heart back there. So, any questions? Yes, ma'am.
As someone with a background in law enforcement, what are your opinion, your take on on all the calls for criminal justice reform and police reform.
You get rid of police, you might as well throw everything in the bag.
Say what?
You get rid of police, you might as well throw everything in the bag.
Yeah.
As I always say, there's always bad apples on every job that you go to. That's no matter what job. In my heart of heart, I believe there are more good officers than bad officers.
I believe that too, but what do we do about the bad ones?
You gotta get rid of them. You gotta get rid of them. They gotta be weeded out. Is that hard to do? Yes, ma'am. That's being quite honest. Because you still got some things in place where officers see things, they may not report it. That's one thing that I teach my students. No matter what rank it is, if a person's doing wrong, you report it. I don't care if it's the sheriff, the chief, captain, whoever. That's morally right. That's ethically right. You gotta have ethics and morals. That is the two most important things that I take dearly. You see wrong, report it. Will that give you a black eye? So what? I have done it in my career because you got to go home. You got to face yourself in that mirror. And throughout 17 years, today marks 17 years for me since I graduated the academy in law enforcement. Throughout 17 years, I can say, and I'm proud to say, I never mistreated anyone. I treated everyone with kindness and respect, regardless of what they were charged with. Why? Because they are still a human being, and they still deserve respect, no matter what they've been charged with. Just because a person is charged with a certain charge doesn't mean you treat them like dirt. But for us, getting those bad officers out, they need to go out. Will it take time? Yes, ma'am, it will. But I also believe that you see more of the bad than the good because the bad sells. The bad sells. You can see with the news, media, things of that nature, they're gonna see the bad. You're not gonna see the good or the officers helping this person, helping that person. You're gonna see the bad. So it'll take time, but I'm a firm believer that as we go in the right direction, those bad officers will go. And I believe eventually they will go on their own because there's too much good. You got too much good going on, nobody won't be around that much good.
Just give kudos to Courtney. When we first met, we were at the gym, I think.
Yes, sir.
And since then, his demeanor has never changed. He's always been kind, compassionate, willing to help. And you never see him in a different mood. It's just there. And that's what impressed me about him so much. You know, he's always been Courtney, regardless of what's going on. And that's gonna carry him a long way.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, like I said, I'm very proud of it, but I wouldn't even like that side. Just like Mr. Burton said, he never changed, his demeanor is still the same. He loves everybody, he gets out there and do what he can for them. Thank you for a good job.
Thank you, sir.
And he's also our volunteer minister at Advil Church of Christ. He left that out.
I love it.
Right. One of 3 ministers that we have to volunteer for us since we lost our minister. Yeah.
Well, I had the pleasure and the honor to work with Courtney at the PD for a short period of time. He decided to fly the coop on me, but it was a pleasure working with him. And like he said, he treated everybody the same with the same respect, and he's still carrying that today. As a matter of fact, I can see more into this young man, and I'm so proud of him with the program that he is established along with the others. I would black youth and young men like this. I wish we had more and more and more. But now I have a question. I know we were talking about weeding out the bad officers, and it's gonna take time. But most of this, maybe I might be out of place, is some of it is like buddy, right? Okay, so within the department, it goes outside of the department as well, right? So how, because sometimes it starts at the top. So how do you handle that? How do you approach that?
As a supervisor, as a chief or a sheriff, you always got to remember, or even as an officer, just because you take off that uniform doesn't mean you're not an officer anymore.
Right.
You're officer 24/7. That's the job. The eyes on you. But for its leadership, it starts at the top. If you have a leader who's always goofing off, then the people up on him gonna goof off. If the leader don't take anything seriously, they're not gonna take anything serious. So you must have structure. For number one, they need to have structure. You need to lay the groundwork and have policy and procedures. This is what happens, you break this policy. This is what happens, you break this policy. And eventually, if they keep breaking policy, you gotta get rid of them. One of the things that I think is good now, the academy now requires an agency to report an officer back to the academy. So if an officer gets fired for misconduct, that has to be reported to the academy, which is, I love. Because if I'm a chief or a sheriff somewhere and this person's name come across my desk as a hiree, I can check with the academy and like, okay, why did he leave this department? Why did he leave that department? So those things are documented. Where I used to be, you know, a person can leave an agency today and go get hired another one the next day, and there's no type of traction right there. So I like that now what they're doing, so that is a step in the right direction. That is a step to make sure the old type of ways, those ones that causing trouble, is not continue to be in this type of position. Because with this position, it comes with a lot of power. You got to have someone that can manage this power. So you got the power to arrest someone. You got the power to take someone. God forbid, you got the power to take someone's life if it's justified. And that's a lot of power that the state is entrusting to a person when they become a police officer. So, as I always tell my students, you can misuse it, use it correctly. But if you misuse it, you can drive that car one day and be in the back of it the next day. So it will continue to take time, but again, I think as time goes on, things keep put in place. I think those old ones get weeded out.
So what are you saying? We, as citizens of the public, if we see anything or
Report
think
it.
anything,
Report it.
report
I'd
it?
say, if I was a chief or sheriff, that's the type of committee that I would want in my community. I would want a citizen community, a citizen committee. Basically, you see things reported. Because again, as a leader, you're not gonna see it all. You're not gonna hear about it all. But you have people in the community that looks like the community, and that can give you that third eye, so to speak.
Yeah.
And you take what they have, and you do your investigation within your department, and you can find out what is going on. Because again, as a leader, you're not gonna see and hear everything.
Okay.
What do we need to do to get you to run for office? At some point in the future.
I don't live here, so.
Or wherever you live.
Dr. Bob,
Straddle the fence.
Dr. Bob had a hand up one time.
Yeah. You have given us, numerous arguments, to the Republican charge that Democrats all want to defund the police. I just wonder if you could crystallize that into one, like, soundbite or whatever. It sounds like what you're teaching your students is the process for maintaining good officers and getting rid of the bad. Tell us something about the process. Is there a report form that you tell them how to use and how to walk it through the chain of command?
For as reporting a bad officer,
Yeah, a bad incident.
departments set it up different. Some departments, I've seen some departments have a anonymous form. Some departments don't. Because you have some officers who want to report it but don't have the courage to report it. So some departments have a box where they can just say, on such day, I saw this right here. But then you have some officers who just, they see wrong, they gonna report it. And that's what I teach my students, to stand up, be that officer you need to be, and report the wrong. That's the only way we're gonna fix it. You can't just sit idle and see wrong and say nothing, because then you're a part of the problem. If you just sit idle and just seeing what they doing wrong and you saying, oh, that's wrong, but you don't go report it, so you're a part of the problem.
Do you teach them how to deal with getting deflected or squelched if somebody tries to say you can't do that, and that's gonna mess up the department?
For as what you can go look, what you.
Yeah, if you're gonna report an incident and, your supervisor says, let's keep quiet about that, how do you deal with that?
Report it. I don't been there.
Report
I
to
don't-
the
I don't
second one too?
I'm gonna report it, yes, sir.
Yeah, okay.
But why, I gotta go home. I have to go. I have to look myself in the mirror
I
every day.
wish I could have gotten you to take one of my classes at Lander. They're all in English, so.
I have to, that's what keeps me, and say, my aunt back there, that's how my parents raised me.
Yeah.
I have to look myself in the mirror. And again, 17 years, I can lay my head down at night knowing I never mistreated anyone. And that's something, many officers can't say, but I can.
Do you think that some officers, not all, it's like I agree there's some good cops and there's some not so good. Do you think some hide behind qualified immunity?
Yes.
What can you do with that?
That is an ongoing debate. And I look at it as this. I'm telling my story. If I know I hadn't done anything wrong, I have nothing to hide. Even if it looked like I did wrong, I'm reporting what I did, So for me, and just for me personally, I don't have anything to hide. As long as I know I'm following the policy and procedures of that department, then I'm good.
Okay.
Phil, yes, sir.
The mentoring program, where you meet at and what time?
Piedmont Tech, Models Academy, we met at Piedmont Tech. We are, since COVID, we're getting back on our regular schedule. COVID, we stopped things a little bit. But we got a gala coming up, those dates to be announced, where we honor the seniors. Last couple of years, we gave them a blazer, we give them some type of token, send them off to college. That is our goal, get them graduated, send them off to college. And we doing all that we can do within our power to make sure they are successful. And it doesn't stop there. We check on them, we get on them, we give them life lessons, teach them how to tie a tie. A man need to know how to tie a tie, present yourself, know how to speak in front of people. So we do those things, prepare them for life.
I know you say you mentor kids of all ages. How young is the youngest that's in the academy?
So when we first started, we did 9th to 12th.
Ninth grade.
9th to 12th grade. But myself, Chris Thomas, and Steve Coleman, we came together like, we need to go back a little bit more. So we started in 4th grade. So we have 4th through 12th now. The good thing that we do now, we have partnered with the schools. So we'll go inside the schools now, make it a little bit easier on the parents or traveling wise. So we go into the schools. The schools have been so graceful to carve out a time for us where we come in. We spend about an hour and a half with them each week. So we go to a different school each week. And even with that, with the permission of their parents and with the permission of the school district and the schools, we check grades. They not up to par, we figure out what the problem is, and we get them back where they need to be. But one thing we make sure they understand, that everybody's not an A student. Everybody's not a B student. We got to get you where you are that student. If you're a strong C student, okay, how can we maintain? But the goal is to get you to a B. The goal is not to stay at that C, and so that's what we do.
Okay.
I don't know if this is fitting in our conversation, but I heard on TV, you know, all these shootings at the schools.
Mhm.
One of the schools has set up a phone number that if you hear anything about a shooting or kids talking about it, you can call in.
Yes, ma'am.
To see, which is, somebody said, well, that's what we're doing now.
Yes, ma'am.
But we're not doing it. And I was wondering about getting it publicized, that if you hear anything,
Yes, ma'am.
yeah, send it in.
It is, the school districts, have set up certain
Yeah.
levels where things
But
happen.
that kind of stuff needs to get out.
Yes, ma'am.
We know it, but we don't know it.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. And it's, you know, the last, like I said about the incident that happened at Greenwood High, you see things where they say they dropped it on, Al dropped it on their phone, kid playing, and he sent a message. That was quickly investigated, and that student was handled with. Even the same one that happened in Lawrence, same scenario. Lawrence had, I think they had two, like back-to-back, or had one Monday and had one Wednesday. That was a couple weeks, maybe a month ago. But just making it aware, that getting the word out.
Okay.
I really, you know, it's so often that we're here day after day. And somebody's gotta see something,
Yes, ma'am.
and it needs to click. I need to call this in.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. And from what we've been doing, like, we just had a training last week over at Emerald High School. We do those yearly, active shooter situation. Pray God that one doesn't happen around here, happen no more. But you always have to prepare. We're living in that type of time where we have to prepare for those things. Just praying that it never happens, but we must stay ready if it does happen.
Okay, thank you so much for coming. Any other questions? Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
Okay, now we have a candidate for State Party Chair, Ms. Catherine Bruce Fleming. Let's give her a hand as she come around.
How y'all doing? Man, thank you so much. Boy, I had to come in the storm.
Yeah.
But that's all right, got here just in time. So I'm glad to be back in Abbeville. I came here last year during the U.S. Senate race. And y'all were so gracious and so welcoming. So that was a race that gave me the opportunity to go around the state. And there were 3 candidates in the race. One of them a state legislator with all the support. But when the votes came in on the first round, I was at the head of the leaderboard. So that shocked everybody. A lot of folks were, what's going on? You know, so I didn't win the second part of it, but what did I do after that? I decided that it was important to continue to focus on making sure that we had a U.S. House and Senate Democratic majority. So we had a House majority and we had kind of a weak Senate majority. So I got with a group called Swing Left, and they provide opportunity to help in those battleground states. So South Carolina was not a battleground state, but it gave us the opportunity to participate in that effort. So I started an organization called South Carolina for U.S. House and Senate Dem Majority. Very simple. And they gave us the tools, the website, for people to be able to call, do work from home, or go to those locations. They also provided a list of all of these races that we are able to assist, and we made the choice about who we're gonna assist. So they work in partnership with the DCCC. Okay, DCCC is the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee. And you might have heard about that because one of my opponents works for that in this race. But they also work with Swing Left and the DSCC, which is the Senate party. So they gave us a choice of these races to participate in. One of the races that I helped with was the John Fetterman race. And we did that by having events, phone calling. I did a little fundraising for them as well. And they won their race. I also got a phone call during the runoff of Raphael Warnock. Said, hey, we need boots on the ground down here. We gotta make sure that Warnock wins this race. So I put out the blast to all of the state party chairs. Hey, we have an opportunity, paid, to go down this weekend to help. Anybody wanna come? So I was able to get about 14 folks from around the state to make that trip. So some drove, some flew, however they got there, they were covered. Had a hotel room for them, transportation and everything. So we worked with the Georgia Democrats, as well as with the campaign. We came there, got our assignments, did our door knocking, and stayed there a couple of days and came back home. So when I got home and I was watching the returns, they showed the location where we had been working, Cobb County. And so, that really made me proud to know that South Carolina was in the epicenter of where they were trying to get all the votes for Warnock, and we made sure that he won. We had some races that we did win. Elaine Loria, who was the House member who fought for us for January 9th. And I really wish we'd been able to keep her. But those were the kind of things that I did after, so I wanted to stay engaged. Then we had our elections here. So the U.S. did pretty well with our House and Senate Dem majority. The House didn't quite make it, which is why we had a little bit of chaos going on up there. But South Carolina, everything tanked. We didn't have a coordinated campaign. It was just ridiculous. And as a candidate, no support. I didn't get any support. And but I said, I'm in a primary, I get it. There are three of us. And those other folks who were candidates who paid their filing fee, who didn't have opposition, they must be on the red carpet right now. They're getting everything. Well, I talked to a couple of them. They were just like me, no support. So how can we be surprised with that kind of outcome that we had? So after the general election, I got a call, and a person said to me, there's gonna be elections for state party offices next year. I think you ought to run for chair. And that was really a great compliment to have somebody ask you to do that. So here we are, and we filed and didn't have to pay a dime, which I loved. Because when I filed for US Senate, I paid the highest fee in the state, $10,000 something. That's what we had to pay. Higher than Cunningham. So we appreciate the opportunity to offer to serve without that barrier. But now I think you want to know, what's the difference between me and the other candidates? What is unique, and what am I bringing to the table? What is my vision for the party? Well, one thing that I will say about myself is that I'm not a political operative, and I'm not a political insider. I don't run campaigns. That's not what I've done. I've been a party activist, a Democratic Party activist, at a number of different levels. So that, earlier this year, I was working as a director of operations for Richland County Dams. Just stepped away from that to do the rest of the week, these weeks of this race. But I wanted to do that job because many of us are volunteers with our county party. But being a paid person, working with the chair, now that person's gonna see everything and see what the strong points are, what the weak points are, and that's what I wanted to make sure that I knew. Because I've had the chance to go around the state and talk to the chairs. But this let me see, okay, what's happening at the precinct level? What kind of support do the chairs need? What kind of support do the precinct leaders need? How are they helping the people who are running? How are they helping the candidates? How are they fundraising? So you get to see all of these things close up. In addition, I did the other volunteer things that a lot of you all do. I was a precinct leader. I was an executive committee person. In 2020, I was able to go to, well, I didn't actually go to the national convention because we didn't have a physical convention to go to. We did it virtually. So I did that. And I also was a volunteer for a number of years as a volunteer with the Democratic Congressional Committee that put on the convention. So I did that for a couple of years. So I had a good range for a number of years and also was a poll manager. That lets you see the flip side. What do the voters experience when they come to the polls? You know, are they confused? Do they know where their precinct is? Do they know what information they need to vote? Do they know who's on the ballot? What's really happening? So I see a lot of places there where we can do the work. But my limit wasn't in the party. A lot of my work is outside the party as an activist. So I work with groups like Black Voters Matter. I was their statewide coordinator, bringing them to South Carolina. I worked with the Women's March, and they came into being after the Trump win, like Indivisible. So I worked there and did some training with Indivisible. I worked with a group called Poor People's Campaign. So those of you are aware of that effort. They are really focused on a comprehensive view and how we make sure that everything we do is focused on low income. Work with environmental groups and LGBTQ as well, and Native American. So that is something that I bring to the table. I've been doing that around the state, and I've had statewide executive jobs. So one of them is with South Carolina ETV, work with them. Work with South Carolina Humanities Council as assistant director. And so through that process, I learned about grant writing. And I've continued to write grants successfully with a variety of groups, with a group that I work with, and with other organizations, helping them to raise money. So that is a competitive process where you have to write out and convince these other folks that you're the ones that need money. And of course, we'll be doing that for the state party. So it's good to have that experience. So I've raised hundreds of thousands of dollars in that way over the years. So what do I think needs to happen with the state party? I think that we have had people who are skilled campaigners as our chair. And we know that still something is lacking with that model. We talk about the importance of winning these races and voting blue and all that sort of thing, but there's still something missing if we just focus on campaigning and having someone with campaign skills. I think what we need is someone who says the most important thing for the party to focus on is forming coalitions and partnerships with organizations, with our elected leaders, and with individuals to create results, measurable results in people's communities. So my intent, if I win this race from May to December is to develop those partnerships and say, okay, Abbeville County, what do we want to see a partnership, Democrats, organizations, elected officials accomplish in this county? Now, we know we have some municipal races this year all over the place. And we know that we have had ARPA funds come in from the federal government. We have had infrastructure funds come into the federal government. So we can talk about how are those funds being applied and put some pressure toward making sure that they're invested in underinvested communities. We can make sure that certain things are passed locally at the municipal level, because of course session will not be happening at the legislative level. And even if it were, we are in a super minority situation there. So there's not gonna be a whole lot passing there. As a matter of fact, I went there a couple of weeks ago to the State House to talk to some Democratic legislators. The Republican legislators come out of the chambers. Boy, they're happy as clams. Hey, how you doing? Hey, man, shaking each other's hands. They're just, oh boy, they're having a good time. They're not feeling any resistance. Because any resistance that they do get, they can ignore. Unless they feel, like they want to be magnanimous. And say, oh, come in, this hate crime bill, that looks good. I'm gonna, we're gonna do something about that. I don't know if it's passed all the way. They might just make it look good. But this is where we are at the state level. We still have opportunities at the local level to make some things move through a partnership. Because I think what people need to see from Democrats is, as much as I like handing out coats and that kind of thing, they want to see us elect people and making a real difference in our communities. That's what they want to see. That's why I think people aren't voting. That's why people aren't coming to the polls. Because they say, it doesn't make a difference. I don't see anything changing. How many people have heard that? Okay, I haven't seen anything change. So we have the first in the South happening. February 3rd is going to be the first presidential Democratic primary in the nation. And yes, that deserves attention. And yes, it's going to get us additional revenue and things like that. But we were first in the South for many years. So we're kind of accustomed to what's going to happen with being first. You get more press, and you get, this influx of folks around the state and all these opportunities to see the presidential candidates. So we kind of know that drill. We'll just be doing it earlier, than we had previously. So I think whatever is happening, first in the nation, additional resources, all of that should go to our alliance with other folks to make measurable change happen, period. So that has to be at the top of the list. Right now I hear, some of the other candidates and first, second, third, and some of the people from different positions are talking about that. But I feel, this gentleman was talking about leadership. I think if you want something to happen, it's gonna come from the top, many times. And if the person at the top is not putting this issue at the top of the agenda, it's not gonna happen. It's just not. I don't care who's jumping up, hey, you gotta do this. Okay, well, we'll get to that. We're gonna do this first. So put me at the top of the Democratic Party for South Carolina. We'll say, these are the things we're gonna focus on. We're gonna focus on investment in our underserved communities. We're gonna focus on the ability of women, LGBTQ folks, African American people, other marginalized people to advance. We're gonna focus on poverty. We're gonna focus on the environment. All these things that we have on a paper called the platform, that we put the resolutions and, who talks about the platform again? after, after the convention. So I think that if we do that, we will bring people in who are not at the table right now. We will have those partnerships. And we will see people saying, oh, okay, well, these Democratic folks have produced this result. I need to help on their campaign. I need to volunteer with them. I need to volunteer with the party because I see what's going on. So I think that is the difference that I bring to the table. What are the other specifics that I want to do? Well, with regard to fundraising, we have had conversations with the labor organization, and they have said they're gonna donate to the state party for a period of years. So that's gonna be whoever is the chair, that money is coming in. I think my job is to diversify the sources of money. So it's not all coming from one or two places. So we want to talk to other leaders and corporations that share our values. Okay, we want to be careful about that. We want to have leaders and groups that share our values donating to the party. And as a person who has written grants, I think I can make a good pitch for funding with small donors and with medium-sized donors. And we need to make sure that county parties are a part of that mix of getting funds. You know, because we have some groups that do very well fundraising. We have others that need more help. How are we making sure that those folks get the support they need, that your county party gets the support it needs? Candidates need help raising money. Who in here has been a candidate besides me? Okay. Candidates need help raising money. We need to get the expertise to share with all candidates. I don't want any candidate to feel like the party is not supporting them. You know, that there's this other person that's a great candidate. We all have to get behind this person, the other people just will whatever. We don't want to do that. So I want to make sure that that happens as well. So that's the fundraising part. County party training. I've talked to many county chairs who have told me, you know what, I got into this county position and I had maybe a day with the chair, with the old chair mentoring me, and that's it. You're just on your own. Well, that's not gonna be a good outcome. I'm sure you have a lot of training to get you where you need to be. We need to do likewise for our county chairs and our other officers. I went to a meeting the other day when there was a county party meeting and there was an election for new officers. Somebody asked, should I close that? I'm gonna close that. Okay. Somebody asked, what does the county chair do? What does the vice chair do? What does the second and third vice chair do? And the chair couldn't answer that. And I thought, okay, that's not what we need. But it wasn't the chair's fault because we haven't provided that training.
That's not true.
What?
Brenda, all of us get training.
Well, if you can answer what.
I would say that would be the fault. I'm not trying to interrupt you.
Right, go ahead.
One of the things that I think that the party has done really well is training, and they send us information and the rules to the party. And if that person, because we're volunteers, if they have not taken the time to travel to go get trained, or to go because they do regionalize it, try to make a huge effort, then I would say that was that chair's problem.
So you say that there's training
Yes.
in Columbia?
Yes, and one of the first things Brenda did was she became chair, she got herself trained. And her officers, she wants to make sure that they're trained, and she's done a fantastic job doing that. So,
Yeah.
and I'm I think Trav Robertson's been a hell of a chairman.
Mhm.
And I think that's something that he breathes air into is our local parties and make training, and we have computers that they have put training on how to operate the computers with the voter file. And I think those are good things and that they should be commended for doing. And I'm sorry that you worked with the county chair that did not know, but he should have had his booklet or his, you know, his notebook with the rules and what everybody does. I'm an executive committeeman and I know what I'm supposed to do. Brenda did new rules, she gave it to me, and the party sent it via our email process. So there are things that the party does well, and when they do things well, I'm gonna take up for them, and I'm gonna take up for my chairman.
Oh, well, your
And I don't think
chairman
Brenda
is.
would tell you, she said
Oh,
that
no,
experience.
I'm not saying that every chair has that experience, of course. You know, we know that there's a lot of different kinds of experiences. So what I'm saying is, this is an experience that I heard about, that I wanna make sure that we have an even situation. So it might be somebody that, you know, doesn't have computer access, whatever is going on. But I'm not gonna say one size fits all, and if you didn't do this, then no. I'm gonna find out, hey, what's going on? You know, we haven't seen you, do you need something else? Because we wanna make sure that you get the support. So if you need it another way, we're gonna do it another way. So that's what I think is important, is to make sure that we're keeping tabs on all the leadership, making sure that they get the information. If they need it a different way, we're gonna give it to them a different way. And then everyone will rise to the top, and every party will rise. Go ahead.
Well, we're talking about training for the party chair people. As you said, they're all volunteers.
Right.
And the training's in Columbia. Is there any type of mileage allowance for the county chair people to get to Columbia?
They regionalized it, they were in Greenwood, they were in Greenville last year, they went to Spartanburg, they went to Rock
Okay,
Hill.
but I'm just wondering, for those county chair people who might be a little further away from where the training is, for whom, since they're volunteers, for whom transportation to wherever the training is might be an issue.
Right.
Is there any kind of travel allowance available? And if not, is that something that maybe the state party should consider?
Well, that reminds me of a couple of things. One is, I work with Black Voters Matter. What they did was not to say, hey, we have all this great stuff and ideas, we're gonna come and lay it on you. They would say, who in the community is doing the work? Who is doing the work? And it's so easy for us to go through our communities and see people doing that work. You know, unpaid, unrecognized, you know, whatever the case may be, but they're doing what needs to be done. So their question is, how can I support these people who are doing the work? What do they need to increase their ability to do the work? So they might need a little gas money if they're going around, you know, the state to do certain things. They might need money for snacks from other volunteers. So what are the things that they need? So I think that's a good example of saying we can do that with our party. What are the things that are needed to participate? So do we need to come to you? Do you need support to come to us? How can we do that? So I'm 100% willing to do that because I see that works. Another example of something that reminds me of is one of the conventions, the year that Bernie Sanders was in the race. And this is the national convention. So you have all these, you know, folks who are trying to go to the national convention, the Bernie delegates. So here's what the Bernie delegates did. They provided a website with every delegate, little information about those delegates who needed help to get to the convention. You know, this is Mary. She lives in Seneca, South Carolina. You know, she's a single mom. She won her seat, but she needs help with the airfare. GoFundMe. I was like, wow, isn't that great? They are making sure that their delegates get to where they need to go. They're not saying, oh, well, you can't. Too bad. So I think that's a wonderful attitude and one that we can use to support making sure that those who are volunteering for this party get the assistance that they need. So I'm 100% for that. I think that would be terrific. Yes.
I think size is one thing that needs to be considered. I'm a trader, and I went down to Columbia, and I had no idea what they were talking about. They're talking about big places, where they have CPAs that are on their treasury, and it did not apply to a smaller place. And yet there was all kinds of stuff I needed to know. I wanted to know, I don't know that I needed to know. I wanted to know. And then we had something else that was supposed to feed us, and it didn't. You know, with communication is the same thing.
Right.
Columbia's organization and stuff is going to be different than Abbeville.
Right. Right.
And, you know, you know who the workers are and that kind of thing. That's common. But there are, I mean, she's not going to pull somebody with $1 million that might give it to her. Well, maybe she is. Cross her fingers.
Right, right.
But I think, you know, we put everybody in the same pot. And really, the training needs to vary all.
Right, right. And you see that most commonly in technology training. You know, where you're bringing people in for Folk Builder and they don't know how to set up an email. So you have to start with where those people are. And actually, you can find some local resources. You know, in Richland County, our library offers, and probably since all the libraries are in the same network, they offer the same kind of thing, you know, training for different kinds of computer uses. So you can make sure your volunteers in the Democratic Party know about that, get that training, and then you're ready for the next step of Folk Builder. So we could do the same for the treasurer. We could do the same for the secretary. So different layers of training to help make sure that people know what to do, that they're supported. So I think that's going to be important. So we talked about training, we talked about fundraising. Mostly, you know, we talked about having that alliance, which is going to be important, and building something that is permanent. You know, we can often get money and say, okay, how can we use the money? We might use it for salaries, we might use it for some other things, but how do we use it for something that's going to last in Abbeville County, in Abbeville Democratic Party? You know, computers, laptops, phones for phone banking, copy machines. These are things that last. So it'd be good, you know, office space. These are things that last and enable you to take the next step forward. So how do we make sure that our counties have that? You know, I don't even know how many county parties have an office. So that's one thing I'm trying to find out, who has an office and who doesn't, because it's not on the website. It's not on the website, so we need to find that out. Another thing that's important to me is accountability and transparency. Okay, so what are some examples of that? Transparency is how much does the county party take in? How much do they spend? That's not a report that we get. And as treasurer, you know what I'm saying. We don't get that report, and I think we should. You know, I asked for the report. I was actually told, well, you can find it at the FEC. So if anybody's been to the FEC lately, it's not easy to find stuff there. I can do it, but it's not easy. So I think we need to make sure that all of us who are getting those donate emails, you know, because we're getting those emails asking for us to be a yellow dog and be a blue dog and, you know, all of that. We need to have a financial report. So I think that's important, and that's something I would do. What else? What does accountability look like as well? Making sure that all of our elected officials are held to a good standard. We want to make sure we follow ethics laws. We want to make sure that we're talking about dark money. And what does that mean? I had the opportunity to learn about dark money because I was chosen a couple of years ago to be on the state grand jury. So how many have been on a jury before, just a regular jury? How many have been on a state grand jury? Well, the difference between a jury and a state grand jury is how do you get on a state grand jury? You get a letter, right? You get a letter for the jury.
Yes.
Yeah, you get a letter. With a state grand jury, you get a policeman at your door. What I do? Oh no, we're just here to, oh my gosh. Okay, all right. So that's how you get your invitation to be on the state grand jury. So I was selected to be on that, and then I was further selected to be the foreperson on that. And what they were looking at was public corruption. Public corruption is looking at state legislators. And we looked at their relationship with a number of agencies that were coming, asking for certain things, and a lobbyist firm. So the person who chose me to be the foreperson, some of you may have seen him on TV. Who watched what's the trial that just happened recently? Murdoch, okay. So who's the judge for the Murdoch trial? Clifton Newman. That's the same judge that appointed me to be the foreperson for this. So I was very honored to see him in action. Clayton Waters, y'all remember who Clayton Waters is now from watching the Murdoch trial? He is the state grand jury person. So we saw him, all that stuff he was doing on TV, we saw him doing that every day. That's what he does every day, day in and day out. But he was elevated to even having a little crochet doll made out of him. And Dick Harpootlian, he was actually given a seat. Well, he earned a seat in the Senate because of the work of the state grand jury. Because he indicted John Corson for his actions with dark money. So he left the U.S. Senate, he left the state Senate, leaving an opening that Dick Harpootlian won that seat. So all those people in that trial, I have a connection to by being a state grand jury person. But more importantly, we learned about ethics rules, dark money, and the proper role of legislators. So we want to do that same thing for all of our elected officials and remember that this is the role that they're supposed to play. So we need to be keeping that message, and I think the state chair can do that very well. So those are the things that are important to me that I would bring to the table. And I think it's a little different than what we're used to hearing. We're used to hearing, hey, we gotta win races. We gotta win elections. We gotta vote blue. Or the other message, okay, we have this presidential primary coming, and it's so very important for it to, it's gonna run well. We're gonna all be sure that it runs well, because that's what we do. We're proud South Carolinians, and we're gonna do that job well. But I think the important thing, important to the people, is what are we changing in their community that's gonna make their lives better? So that is number one for me as your chair. So I'm asking you to take your roles very seriously. How many people here are delegates? Okay, so I'm asking you all to take your role very seriously. This is the thing that we ask voters to do. Do the review, do the homework, think very carefully about the direction of the party, because you all are deciding the future of the party. And the person who is in this role is going to be speaking to the state, speaking to the rest of the South, and speaking to the nation. They really will be. So I'm going to ask you a question, and the answer is delegates. And then I'm going to sit down. Who has the power? Delegates. I didn't hear anybody but one person. I'm going to have to ask that again. Who has the power? Delegates. Right. Who gets the vote? Delegates, right. Who is going to make a difference in 2023? Delegates, right. I want y'all to sit in that power. Because we hear so much about all these other people and what they're saying and so forth. The power is in your hands this time. So think carefully. I'm Catherine Fleming Bruce. I'm running for chair of the state party. I ask for your consideration. If you have any questions and you want to talk at length to me, please call me. I'm going to give you my number and I'm going to give you my email. And of course, your chair has that information. So please get that from her and reach out to me. We have 2 more weeks of this. On the 28th, we're gonna have our dinner at Bling and Jeans, whatever that means. I don't know what that means, but we're gonna have fun finding out. The fish fry, and the next day is decision day. I'm gonna say one more thing to you. The Rules Committee. Who's your person on the Rules Committee?
I was on there, Monday, I was on the, meeting
On call.
Monday. Not on the roof, but, platform.
Platform
I
Committee.
was on
Okay,
platform.
well, there's a platform committee and a rules committee. So the rules committee discussed the rules of the convention on April 1st. So they met in Columbia, discussed the rules. And one of the questions was how the vote is going to happen. So there's discussion about a standing vote versus a paper ballot. And there was a lot of concern about about the standing vote because we want to be able to vote and not have to have people looking at us to see who we're voting for. So the argument was made. The final decision, I think there was concern about the time that it would take. So they decided to stick with the standing vote and a paper ballot. That doesn't work. Well, I'm going to send, I've sent a letter to Jay and some other folks to say, we would like to make a motion on the floor to have what is called instant runoff voting. So it's also known as there's an organization called Better Ballot South Carolina, and ranked choice voting. So basically what this means is there are 3 people running for chair, there are 9 people running for first vice chair. So there are 2 women and 1 man running for chair. So if one of the women wins the chair seat, 7 people will be on the ballot for first vice chair. That's a whole lot of back and forth. So what would happen in instant runoff is you rank those people. Okay, John is my first choice, Joe is my second choice, Bill is my third choice, and so forth. And then that is tabulated in a way that the people with the least amount of support drop off, and they kind of do it in rounds electronically, and then you'll have the winner that way. So that's being done in a number of other states. It's been done in Alaska, and that's how our Democratic person in Alaska for the House of Representatives won her seat. It's how Eric Adams won his seat in New York. So it's happening, and it's gonna save us some time. So I'm gonna send that around to all the chairs, so your chair can share that information with you. You can look on the website, we have the sample ballots, and we'll see. But we have several people in the party who support this, and we have a state legislator, Democrat, who has sponsored a bill to have this kind of voting at our municipal level. So if we say yes to this, we'll be trying it out, and then hopefully it will work well and it will go to our next state. But I think it'll make things go much faster, and it will protect our privacy and allow people to vote as they wish to vote. So just wanted to make that announcement. So again, I thank you for your time and your attention. Thank you so much for the invitation.
Thank you for coming.
Oh, I'm happy to. Thank you. All right.
Yeah, I was told that you might bring that to the floor about the voting.
Yes.
Standing, bring it to the floor, because there's a lot of concerns about the standing up.
Right.
Yeah, because we discussed it at our meeting Monday, but there's a lot of tall people, there's a lot of short people. Y'all might not get carried.
Yeah, come on, we gotta do something on a national level.
Right.
We can't do this standing up voting stuff. So I'm gonna send that around to everybody so they'll know what it is already.
Right.
So the party is set up to do it if we say
Right.
yes, and you'll see the ballots and see what the ballots look like. So very exciting
But
times.
I'm hoping that they'll do it, the ballot style with the electronic.
Yes.
Because, you can't stand up that long for everybody to count votes.
Yeah, come on, you know, we got electronics now, we don't have to do that old fashioned stuff anymore. Well, thank you
Thank you so
again,
much
thank
for
you
coming.
all.
Yeah, that's good on our hands. And I'd like to thank all of you for coming out and being a part of this meeting that we have today, to see all the candidates and see, what's gonna be going on at the state convention. And I can't wait to go, it's supposed to be really exciting.